It's time for the news.
Algeria has urged in New York the international community to act to protect the most vulnerable people in Gaza, notably women, reiterating its call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave and Lebanon, which are suffering an unprecedented Zionist aggression. In an escalation of the genocidal onslaught on northern Gaza, Zionist occupation forces carried out an airstrike on a residential complex in Jabalia refugee camp last night, resulting in the murder and injury of approximately 150 civilians, including women and children. Nearly 350 young people representing 49 African countries will take part in the 4th edition of the Pan-African Youth Forum scheduled from 1 to 4 November in Oran. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. Good afternoon. In an escalation of the genocidal onslaught on northern Gaza, Zionist occupation forces carried out an airstrike on a residential complex in the Jabalia refugee camp last night, resulting in the murder and injury of approximately 150 civilians, including women and children. This tragic event marks yet another chapter in the ongoing Zionist campaign of ethnic cleansing and genocide in the region that has been going on for 3 weeks. Local sources reported that at least 10 homes in the Al Huja area of Jabalia were struck by occupation warplanes, leading to the murder and injury of dozens of civilians and widespread destruction. Residents of the targeted area issued urgent calls for assistance to transport the wounded. However, rescue teams faced significant challenges in reaching the scene due to ongoing attacks by Zionist occupation forces. A total of 28 Palestinians, including children, have been martyred and 40 others wounded since dawn on Friday by Zionist aerial bombardment and artillery targeting civilians in the town of Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip, according to media reports. A medical source in Khan Yunis quoted by media said that the Nasser Health Establishment and the European Hospital in Gaza had received 28 martyrs, including 10 children, in addition to 40 wounded since dawn on Friday, following the intense Zionist bombardments of the southern and eastern districts of the city. Other sources stated that the Zionist army had targeted a house inhabited by Al-Farah family, resulting in numerous casualties and injuries among the children. The same sources reported that artillery and warplanes targeted the neighborhoods of Al-Manara, Ma'an, Sheikh Nasser, and Qaizan al-Najjar, to the south and east of Khan Yunis, leading to a mass exodus of hundreds of families to the western neighborhoods of Khan Yunis. The Zionist genocidal war in Gaza, now in its 350 or 385th day, has caused 42,847 martyrs and 100,544 injuries as of 24 October, and displaced around 90% of the enclave's population of 2.3 million. Still with the Palestinian file, Palestinian National Council Speaker Rawhi Fattouh stated today that the Israeli atrocities unfolding in Gaza, particularly in the north, constitute a war crime aimed at uprooting the Palestinian people from land and roots. In a statement on Friday, Fattouh described the Israeli occupation's attack and siege on northern Gaza, which involves encircling entire residential areas and bombing them with explosive barrels, as a moral degradation and brutality unimaginable to human minds. He emphasized that this behavior reflects the reality of an occupation that disregards international humanitarian law and human rights principles. Fattouh pointed out that the ongoing attack and siege on northern Gaza, along with the execution of hundreds of innocents left under the rubble of their homes and on the sides of roads, is clear evidence of the tyranny of the Israeli regime, which is emboldened by Western support and U.S. protection. He affirmed that the continuous U.S. administration's neglect of the suffering of the Palestinian people, along with its partnership and complicity with the occupation, is the main reason for the ongoing genocide and mass killing in northern Gaza and throughout the rest of the territory. And Algeria has urged in New York the international community to act to protect the most vulnerable people in Gaza, notably women, reiterating its call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave and Lebanon, which are suffering an unprecedented Zionist aggression. Addressing participants in a public debate organized by the Security Council under the theme Women, Peace and Security, Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Ammar Benjama, emphasized the need to protect the populations in Gaza and Lebanon, especially the women who are the most effective victims.
We reiterate our call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza and also in Lebanon to ensure that all civilians, especially the most vulnerable of them, I mean women, are protected by the international humanitarian law.
Ambassador Benjama called for reinforcing accountability and actions against the actors which violate international humanitarian law and women's rights.
Various stakeholders should federate these several vital commitments. First, reinforce accountability and sanction against actors who violate international humanitarian law and women's rights in conflict zones. Adopt a collaborative approach that involves all relevant stakeholders, such as the United Nations, regional organizations, and civil society, to enhance women's role in peace and security through partnerships and cooperation. Third, promote gender equality policies and develop comprehensive national programs to empower and protect women, particularly in the digital context and during armed conflict.
Finally, Ambassador Benjama highlighted the efforts made by Algeria and the approach it has adopted to strengthen the role of women and to help the artisans of peace at regional and international level.
Recognizing the necessity of amplifying women's role in public life and society, my country, Algeria, has diligently worked to support women as key architects of peace at both national and regional levels. As part of our commitment in implementing Resolution 1325, Algeria adopted a national action plan in July last year, prioritizing the improvement of women's inclusion as a national priority.
And now, in their ongoing genocidal aggression against the defenseless Palestinian population in the besieged Gaza Strip, Zionist occupation forces stormed the Kamal Adwan hospital in the town of Beit Lahia in northern Gaza early this morning. Said Bougazi has the details in this report.
Eyewitnesses reported that soldiers stormed the Kamal Adwan hospital, instructing patients to move to the main courtyard. In the meantime, the hospital director noted that some windows in patient rooms were shattered due to continuous shelling by occupation forces. Last night, the hospital was surrounded with Zionist military vehicles firing upon the facility, endangering sick children inside. Additionally, occupation soldiers blocked essential aid from reaching the hospital, where over 15 patients are in urgent need of surgeries that are impossible to perform under the current siege conditions. The Zionist occupation army has intensified its assault in northern Gaza amid a suffocating siege that has left tens of thousands of people without food and water. The onslaught, which began on October 5th, is the latest episode in the Zionist entity's brutal offensive that has killed nearly 42,800 people, mostly women and children, and injured more than 100,400 since October 2023. The Zionist onslaught has displaced nearly the entire population of the territory amid an ongoing blockade that has led to severe shortages of food, clean water, and medicine.
The Speaker of the National People's Assembly, APN, Brahim Boughali, has met with Algerian startup owners participating in a training session in Seoul, South Korea, on the sidelines of his visit to this country, said a statement by the APM. Bringing together 19 young entrepreneurs, this meeting, which was held in the presence of the ambassador of Algeria to South Korea and the parliamentary delegation accompanying Brahim Boughali, made it possible to discover the diverse institutional composition of the delegation and the specialty of each firm, in addition to the objectives of the training program and the supervisory mechanisms. And the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, has reaffirmed at a meeting with the former president of the the Speaker of the Korean National Assembly in Seoul, Kim Jin-pyo, his willingness to support and strengthen parliamentary relations between Algeria and South Korea. During his meeting with the former Speaker of the Korean National Assembly, Brahim Boughali underlined that his visit to South Korea will further strengthen the high-level dialogue which is able to raise bilateral cooperation to the levels expected, calling, in this respect, to promote consultation and exchange of experience between the two countries. A delegation of the Council of the Nation will take part on the 26th and 27th of October in Accra, Ghana, in the Second Assembly of the Conference of Presidents of African Parliaments for the adoption of the constitutive charter of this conference, said a communique from the Upper House of Parliament. The delegation is made up of the Deputy Chairman of the Council of the Nation, Salim bin Barg, representing the Speaker of the Council of the Nation, as well as Senators Belhaj Bassam Abdou and bin Aida Youssef Rida. Shifting now to the Western Sahara file, the Norwegian Committee of Support for the Sahrawi People has urged the Norwegian shipping company Green Reefers to stop participating in the plundering of the natural resources of Western Sahara, a territory awaiting decolonization. The details again with our colleague Said Bougazi.
We ask you to stop the transport of these cargoes immediately, the committee wrote in a letter to this company, owner of the refrigerated ship Green Oosterwal, used for the transport of fish caught illegally in the territorial waters of occupied Western Sahara. The committee reminded the shipping company of the latest decision of the EU Court of Justice, which definitively invalidated two trade agreements concluded in 2019 between the EU and Morocco due to the inclusion of Western Sahara in these agreements. Referring to the judgments of the European High Court, which has held that the consent of the Sahrawi people to the conclusion of these agreements was one of the conditions for their validity, the Norwegian committee underlines in its letter that this fishery, whose products are transported by this vessel, violates international law. The committee had in the past sent several letters to the shipping company asking it to commit itself not to participate in the delivery of fish caught in the Sahrawi seas. The letters were left unanswered. The authorities decide on the sanctions to be applied. We will monitor their implementation, said recently the president of the NGO Green Shipping to the Norwegian daily newspaper Dagbladet. Indeed, the Norwegian government advises against trading with occupied Western Sahara, but Green Reefers has been involved in the transport of products from this territory for several years.
And finally, nearly 350 young people representing 49 African countries will take part in the fourth edition of the Pan-African Youth Forum, scheduled from 1 to 4 November in Oran, announced Tuesday in Algeria the president of the Higher Council of Youth, Mustafa Hidawi. During a press conference held at the Mufti Zakaria Palace of Culture, Mustafa Hidawi specified that this forum, which will have the slogan Educating an Africa Adapted to the 21st Century, building resilient educational systems for increased access to inclusive, lifelong, quality and relevant learning in Africa, will coincide with the celebration of the 70th anniversary of the outbreak of the glorious Liberation Revolution. With this, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for a weekly program, starting with my colleague Majid Milla with a special program on chemicals. It will be followed by another cultural program by my colleague Jamal Silmani. As for me, I'll meet again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin in English. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for now.
Rising Issues, a weekly program presented by Majid Mila.
Dear listeners, hello and welcome to our weekly program. In today's edition, we are going to discuss one of the world's most critical issues humanity is currently facing: forever chemicals. Before just few decades, no human being or animal in the planet was ever exposed to. We are going to see what are these chemicals, why they are called so, where to find them, how harmful they are, and how to avoid them. Hundreds of everyday products are made with highly toxic fluorinated chemicals called PFAS. They build up in our bodies and never break down in the environment. Very small doses of PFAS have been linked to cancer, reproductive and immune system harm, and other diseases. For decades, chemical companies covered up evidence of PFAS health hazards. Today, nearly all Americans, including newborn babies, have PFAS in their blood, and more than 200 million people may be drinking PFAS-tainted water. What began a miracle of modern chemistry is now a national crisis. In 1946, DuPont, an American multinational chemical company first formed in 1802 by French-American chemist DuPont, v. Colon Industries, introduced non-stick cookware coated with Teflon, today the family of fluorinated chemicals that sprang from Teflon includes thousands of non-stick, stain repellent, and waterproof compounds called PFAS, short for pre- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. PFAS are used in a staggering array of consumer products and commercial applications. Decades of massive use have resulted in contamination of water, soil, and the blood of people and animals in the farthest corners of the world. PFAS are incredibly persistent, never breaking down in the environment and remaining in our bodies for years. DuPont invented the PFAS chemical, patented as Teflon, but 3M became its main manufacturer. In 2001, a scandal erupted in Parkersburg, Virginia, after discovery of the Teflon chemical in drinking water of tens of thousands of people near a DuPont plant. The story is documented in the film The Devil We Know. A class action lawsuit uncovered evidence DuPont knew PFAS was hazardous and had contaminated tap water, but did not tell its workers, local communities, or environmental officials. The lawsuit also triggered studies linking the Teflon chemical to cancer and other diseases. Comprising more than 4,700 chemicals and substances, PFAS are a group of widely used man-made chemicals that accumulate over time in humans and in the environment. They are known as forever chemicals, as they are extremely persistent in our environment and bodies. They can lead to health problems such as liver damage, thyroid disease, obesity, fertility issues, and cancer. The U.S. Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry has identified the following health effects as potential outcomes from exposure to PFAS. They have been used to make non-stick cookware, water-repellent clothing, stain-resistant fabrics and carpets, some cosmetics, some firefighting foams, and products that resist grease, water, and oil. The contamination comes from several sources, like the industrial and still mostly legal dumping of PFAS directly into rivers, lakes, and streams, or the seeping of PFAS into groundwater from waste in our landfills and from burning PFAS-containing products and waste in incinerators. Personal care products like shampoo or floss, and cosmetics like nail polish and eye makeup, some grease-resistant paper, fast food containers or wrappers, microwave, popcorn bags, pizza boxes and candy wrappers, stain-resistant coatings on carpets, upholstery and other fabrics, water-resistant clothes, cleaning products, water-resistant fabrics such as rain jackets, umbrellas, and tents, grease-resistant paper, non-stick cookware, stain-resistant coatings used on carpets, upholstery, and other fabrics. Investigators recently dug into children's products labeled as water or stain-resistant, waterproof, or wrinkle resistant and found that 65% of them contained PFAS, and the highest concentrations were found in school uniforms. Interestingly, items labeled 100% cotton had the highest concentration of PFAS. A study identified a range of foods to be among the drivers of all high PFAS levels, including teas, where a study was conducted in India, tested 108 tea bag samples that were collected from the Indian market and found that 90% of them contained